You heard the students themselves. Amongst the students in the auditorium, when I was, engaging their thought on this matter, some of the students are of the view that, listen, they need to be disciplined. They need to be caned if need be. But like I said, what jumped at me when I listened to the education minister is, maybe this will be welcoming to some teachers and to some parents. But how do we execute this with sense so that we don't go overboard and cause problems? Because there are instances where we've seen some teachers using the cane, and then, they don't use sense, they go overboard, and they create harm and they create problems for some of their children. So how do we make sure that we punish the children the right way? Because punishment is not necessarily to harm, but to correct the child. So how are we going to do this? Is it just a wholesale punish a child, even if it comes to corporal punishment? I also think that to a large extent, if the students are very much aware, because during the debate, one of the points that the students shared was some years ago, when you see a teacher with a cane, the cane has not been used on you, but the mere sight of the teacher holding the cane and standing there puts a bit of fear in you, so you conform, you show some respect, and you do the right thing. So they are of the view that, yes, the cane should be introduced.
Dave, I'm not getting you. So your point is that...
Which point don't you get?
Like, are you saying that the minister must come up with a directive to guide what he's saying?
If not from the minister, even the schools themselves, because every school has a head, the schools themselves should come up with a plan, a guide of a sort, so that the teacher does not just get up and say, I'm going to discipline, so I'm removing my belt and whipping you, or I'm grabbing the cane to whip you. Jose.
That's there. So that will mean that the minister amending the provisions we read the last time.
Yeah.
Because they already have that. So that's what I want to...
You remember that when we read from the code of conduct, or that bit from the school's guide, it tells you that you cannot inflict any form of pain.
Yeah, so that must change.
So even raising of hand that will cause pain was not to be meted out to a student. Kneeling down, that is also a form of punishment, should not be meted out to the student. That's why I'm saying that we should be guided as to how we do this, so that we don't have excesses. You understand what I'm saying? So if you say you're going to lash a child, what punishment warrants what amount of lashes? You understand? And where on the human body are you going to execute that lash?
No, they should categorize the magnitude of the...
that is what I'm saying. You said we should bring it back, but in what form?
So I just wanted to chip in that because, you see, there's already a code of conduct. So, per what David is saying, if there needs to be a directive, they just need to amend the code of conduct. And they shouldn't do it school specific. It should be broad, a policy document, broad, that this is, yes, now we can dismiss students. And David, I like what he said initially. I didn't even know until recently when we were doing the thing and someone contributed that PTAs were also like kind of taken out of the system. We need to involve that because it's a multifaceted thing to raise a child. And my view on this have always been that I'm for discipline, but I think it needs to be guided. So I'm with David on this. But I'm saying that the teacher shouldn't, David, let's also say the teacher shouldn't also overstep some of these things, because you see there's a reason why it was cancelled, and I'm not for it. I've always argued that there need to be some form of corporal punishment in our schools. I am for that.
Oh yeah, of course.
But there need to be a regime where, David, they are punishment, because you see, for a parent ordinarily to rise up and go to a certain school will mean that you have done something that the parents think that is that bad.
It's not always the case. Okay. I on a number of occasions have seen a teacher who had caned a child, not with excesses, just caning the child. The child goes home and tells the parent that, well, I was caned by a teacher. The parent did not bother to ask, what did you do wrong? The parent is mebade yambono. So the fact that the teacher has used a cane on his child, he goes to the school to raise hell.
Yeah, David, I yield to you, but there are instances where you've also seen the picture.
Oh, that's what I thought about the excesses.
That's what I'm talking about the excesses. So I think... apart from amending what the GES says with the punishment and everything, one thing that we don't talk about enough is also the teacher training in regards to, disciplining children.
Yeah.
Because we say, overboard. They shouldn't go overboard. The excesses and all of that. What is the GES doing? Or the bodies that train the teachers also doing about that particular part? Because it looks like there is no way that we can take punishment out of the system, right? if a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old who is in SHS knows his left and right, even though legally they are not adults, but also they need to understand that they need to take responsibility for their actions. So that is that. But what about the teachers? You know, because most of the time, there's some of the videos that comes up, and your punishment, a rage, right? They are just angry and then pouring all their anger onto the student.
You remember when?
How do we
during the sorry to cut you, but during the debate, Jache Pramso,
yeah,
they showed us images, visuals,
of the fair-colored girl with the
and the teacher, the head teacher at the time was interdicted, and we all know what happened after. Those are excesses.
Yeah. So
those are excesses.
And it is because of the excesses that we reached that stage in the first place. So in regards to the teachers, and your students didn't this one, I think the conversation should be more centered around the teachers than even the students.
That is what I'm asking the minister. What engagements are maybe they might have had some engagements behind the scene, because there are times when you call the CHAS, president, you call some head, they're like, oh, I'm going to Accra, I'm going to the Ministry of Education and all that. For all we know, there's been some kind of conversation or discussions behind the scene as to how this is going to be done. You understand?
But the teachers tell us that they don't consult them when they are bringing these directives.
One leg of the thing that the minister also talked about that I'm happy with is dismiss even when necessary. In our time when we were going to school, if you failed a certain for a number of time, you can be dismissed.
Yeah.
When you commit a certain offense in school, you can be dismissed. But it got to a stage in this country where we say we will not dismiss. Now, if you misconduct yourself in, let's say, school A, and then you are dismissed because of that misconduct, if you want to look for another school, that school would want to have a record of you from your previous school. So if a child is in school A, you don't want to conduct yourself such that you will not be dismissed, because if you want to move from school A to school B would want to get to know a bit about you.
Because they would demand a reference.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
They would like to know what warranted your dismissal, whether they can manage it or not. So even at the back of the child's mind,
and this is, I've experienced this myself. In our time.
You were young.
No, baby. But I was on the veg a couple of times. We used to call it something Y2K. Y2, when we were entering the millennium, there was this Y2K compliant computer something that the people thought the world was coming to an end.
Yeah.
So in the schools, they adopted that name. So it's a Y2K, that's which means number of subjects you couldn't pass. So it's either they will repeat you or they will, dismiss you. And they, do Y2K timer, you will be forced to sit down. It is hard for me to sit these bottles down and sit and read for even 2 hours. But when I look at my grades and the Y2K is coming, I don't want to go back home and tell them, say, because of academics, that's a no. And so I'm forced
to sit and learn.
Yeah.
And so for the teachers out there, how are you taking this news from the Minister of Education? For the teachers out there, for the parents out there, how are you also taking this news